Rochester. And I'm so excited to be here today and talk with you all about the different transportation options that are available to you here in Rochester. So before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to our amazing team at Reconnect Rochester. I always like to say that we are a mighty team of 5. There's only 5 staff at our local nonprofit. So we are very small and we take on way too much, more than we can handle, but we get it all done. So our most recent hire was Lindsay Crandall. She just started last month and she's our fundraising and development manager. So she really spearheads efforts into bringing monetary resources into our nonprofit, which helps us to be able to continue our mission and the work that we do. We also have James Dietz, which I believe will be joining us. He's the advocacy and policy manager. So he will be helping me to monitor any questions that come into the chat and questions at the end of the presentation that he can help answer as well. We have our cycling manager. I'll reference a lot of his work throughout the presentation, Jesse Piers. He is really amazing at spearheading, advocating for different bike infrastructure in Rochester and creating a robust bike network. And then we have, of course, our interim executive director, Mary Sarapoli, who somehow keeps it all together, keeps us all organized, and keeps us focused on our mission. So that's our team really quickly. So a quick couple of Zoom reminders. It looks like it's more of a classroom setting, so I don't think this will be an issue. But just make sure to keep your microphone on mute, just to help minimize distractions. And also, if you have any questions that might come in, feel free to utilize the chat feature. But of course, at the end, there will be time for questions. So I will be sure to keep a lookout for that. And also my coworker, James Dietz, will be on the lookout for questions that come in the chat as well. Okay, so I'm always a sucker for interactive presentations. So I don't know how this will work, but if you could drop the names in the chat, and if people from the classroom can share maybe with the instructor in a few words how you guys get around Rochester currently. So is it by foot? Do you take the bus? Do you take RTS? Do you ride a bike? Do you have a car? Is it scooter, skateboard, you name it? Or is it a combination of these things? So I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of time to do that, if that's okay. And in the meantime, I'm gonna give you a little bit of background about myself, and just so you have some perspective going into the presentation, and how I became involved in our work at Reconnect Rochester. So as I mentioned, I'm Jaisha Escadale. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at Reconnect Rochester. I'm originally from New York City, born in Brooklyn, raised in the Bronx. And I grew up being used to taking public transportation, taking the bus, taking the subway, whether it was going to school, going to work, getting groceries. My mom would just push her little cart full of groceries onto the subway, making space for our groceries for the week. And it was super embarrassing, but that's how we got around the city. Also, as New Yorkers, we walk everywhere. So taking public transportation and walking wherever I could was how I got around. So when I graduated from college and I moved to Rochester, it was a major culture shock, as you can imagine. The transportation system was very different from what I was used to in New York City. Of course, we don't have a subway system here in Rochester. So I primarily relied on taking the bus to get to work. I didn't have a car or a license. I actually only got my license in 2021. So I would say I'm still fairly new to my other peers in college who started driving around 16 and I was like 21 and I didn't even have my license yet. So I really had to get creative about the different ways to get around Rochester. And that's when I was introduced to cycling as a way of getting around and as a actual efficient mode of transportation. So I started biking to get groceries. I started picking up pizzas for dinner by my bike with a couple of bungee straps in my rack on the back of my bike. And of course, I would still walk to get to work. And right now I would identify as car light. So that's a term that we use at Reconnect Rochester to identify someone who doesn't rely on driving to get to their destination as much. So they utilize other methods of transportation to get around, whether that's taking the bus, walking, riding their bike. We have people who have a one wheel, hoverboards, e-scooters, anything like that. So I would identify as car light, and I'm very lucky enough to live close enough to work so that I can walk to work. Today, I actually rode my e-scooter for the first time to work, which is a lot of fun. So anytime that I can leave my car at home, especially when it's really nice outside, we're going into spring and summer, that's what I do. And I will utilize the other methods that are available to me to get to work. So enough about me. I want to get a little bit more into who we are at Reconnect Rochester. For anyone who's never heard of us before, we're a really small nonprofit local here to Rochester. Like I said, there's 5 of us, but we also have volunteers and our board of directors who helps to advise us on different projects that we work on here. So we advocate for sustainable, equitable, and efficient transportation methods across Monroe County. So that can be by bus, by rail, on bike, or on foot. So we have very strong partnerships with RTS, and we meet with them bi-monthly to talk about different updates that are happening within the transportation system. We want to see a bus system that is frequent so that our transit system is as accessible as possible to anybody who wants to take the bus to work, to get groceries, access basic amenities, things like that. We also want to see a continuous bike network in Rochester. So right now, if you've ever tried cycling to get anywhere in Rochester, you might have encountered a situation where you're on a bike lane and then it just ends. And then next thing you know, you're next to high-speed car traffic and you're just like fighting for your life to get to your destination. And that's not something that we want if we want to build or if we want to see Rochester become a bikeable city. We also want to see a city where it's safe for pedestrians and our most vulnerable neighbors here in the city to get around safely and equitably. We want to see continuous sidewalks, and that was a major culture shock for me when I moved to Rochester. In New York City, you can walk anywhere and not have to worry about a sidewalk ending or there not being sidewalks anywhere. So that's something that was near and dear to me, is like, I would love to see a more robust transportation network here in Rochester. And I want to see people get inspired to use the different methods that are available to us. So I want to give you guys a little bit more of a sense of the different projects that we work on. And I'll try not to spend too much time on this so that we can really get into the mobility resources that are available here in Rochester. But we do advocate for a lot of things, and there's a lot that we spend our time on a day-to-day basis. So we advocate for safer and complete streets. So what does that mean? What does that look like? So Reconnect Rochester hosts a lot of programs throughout the year that advocates for safer streets. So we just, in this first photo, you'll see, this was a virtual trip that we took to Albany. So it's kind of like an annual thing. And over the past few years, we've held it virtually. So this is where we meet with New York State legislators to be able to advocate for our transportation priorities. So this looks like advocating for New York State as a whole to adopt a complete streets policy, or reducing speed limits so that we can reduce the risk for pedestrian or cyclist fatalities on our streets. So we have a whole list of things that we kind of encourage our New York State legislators and change makers to support or sponsor these bills so that we can see a future for Rochester to be more equitable in terms of a vast amount of mobility options for people. Another project that we work on is our Complete Streets Makeover. So basically we take that complete streets mindset and I put it into an intersection. So we are revamping an intersection in Rochester that usually has a history of pedestrian fatalities, pedestrian injuries, cyclist injuries, or is just like an overall hazard for people within the community. And we have done projects where we install bollards. So these are like curb extensions and bollards so that people aren't zooming around, like when they're turning the corner, so that they can slow down a little bit. So we install different traffic calming elements so that people aren't, driving recklessly, and so that the overall environment feels safer for people in the community. And right now we are actually partnering with the 19th Ward Community Association to revamp the Arnett Boulevard and Warwick Avenue intersection. So it's that intersection that's like right next to the Arnett Branch Library. So that Complete Streets Makeover is set for June. So right now we're actually developing a number of designs with the neighborhood, and they're really spearheading this. We're just guiding them, but they are being the agents of change in their own communities to revamp the intersection to be safer for everybody in the community. So that's one of our biggest projects. It's a heavy lift that all of our team members are involved in. And that's something that is a project where we have the opportunity to implement permanent changes. So although the Complete Streets Makeover is temporary, so I think it will go from June to October. This gives us the opportunity to collect data. So we will see, what is the average speed that drivers are driving now when they encounter this intersection? Is there less pedestrian injuries and fatalities? So we will take that data and point it to our city and our county and say, hey, we need permanent changes at this intersection because street design really makes a difference in preventing pedestrian or cyclist fatalities and injuries in this neighborhood. So that is one of the heavy lifts for one of our projects that we do. And then one of the other things that we do is we directly target driver behavior. So we have a Drive to Be Better campaign. And basically we encourage drivers to slow down, scan, and space. So we encourage people to slow down because unfortunately, and on a lot of Rochester roads, we see people going 10, 20, even 50 miles over the speed limit. And that, of course, creates a higher risk for pedestrian and cyclist fatalities, and we don't want to see that. So we encourage people to slow down. We encourage them to scan for pedestrians and cyclists. So currently on a lot of Rochester roads, people can turn right on red. And a lot of times when people are doing that, they're only paying attention to the car traffic that's coming from the opposite direction, but they aren't really paying attention to pedestrians or cyclists that are crossing the other way. So again, another way to reduce risk of injuries or fatalities. And then we encourage drivers to give bicyclists 3 feet of space because we, again, want to make sure that cyclists, anybody who takes a bike to get to and from their destination feels safe as possible and are given the space that they need to prevent, again, fatalities or injuries. So that's just a few of the programs that we focus on to advocate for safe and complete streets. Another thing that we do is that we advocate for bus stop amenities and a robust network. So this might sound arbitrary, like, I don't even know if anyone has ever seen, these are our bus stop cubes at a couple of different bus stops throughout the city. But that's just a way that we fill in the gaps in bus stop amenities around the city. So this isn't the end goal. We want to see our transportation system prioritize transit riders of all types, whether people are choice riders like myself. Sometimes I take the bus if I want to, or if people are transit dependent. So they rely on public transportation to get around. Either way, whichever category people fall into, we want to make sure that there are amenities that makes riding transit feel comfortable, efficient, and gets you where you need to go comfortably. So we want to see bus stop shelters that have lighting for Rochester's snowiest days, warmth, and different elements that makes transit as accessible and comfortable as possible. I know we've all seen bus stops like this where it's just like a pole and it's kind of leaning to the side. And it's like, what does that say to people who don't currently ride transit about the system that exists at the moment? So I would prefer not to, ride a transit that doesn't even have paved concrete, or maybe has like a plastic chair that's like falling apart. We want to see transit that looks like this. And this is actually in Rochester. This is one of the downtown bus stops. And actually Rochester is currently installing bus stops that has heating and lighting and is a proper shelter. So that's a transit system that we want to push for. And of course, we want to push for more frequency as well. After Reimagine RTS, we had a lot of bus systems that were revamped. And so a lot of buses are seeing at least 30-minute frequency instead of 1 hour. Every hour a bus comes. But this makes sure that people are able to rely on our transit system to be able to get to work or access basic amenities. So those are things that we continue to push for with RTS. Like I said, we do have a very strong relationship with them. And every 2 months we meet with them and say, hey, what's the updates? What can we do to gather more rider input and share that with you so that we can see these system improvements. Another thing that I will reference to throughout the presentation is Jesse's work. Jesse is really amazing, and he really spearheads all of our advocacy work for making Rochester a more bikeable city. So when you think about cities around the world that are bicycle friendly, one thing that they all have in common is that they allow cyclists to get to and from their destination safely and without ever needing to get in contact with a 3,000-pound metal vehicle. People feel safe. People's grandmas feel safe riding to go to the grocery store. Moms have their kids in cargo bikes and they feel safe taking their kids to school in a cargo bike. And that's the kind of Rochester that we want to see. Right now, as I mentioned, our bike network is very choppy. And even myself, sometimes I just don't feel safe cycling on high-speed roads. So right now, in order to get to work, I have to bike down East Main Street. And although it has a bike lane, East Main Street is very fast-paced, like people are commuting to work. So they're going, 5, 10, 15 miles over the speed limit, and it doesn't feel safe. So we want as many people as possible on bikes as a sustainable and viable method of transportation in Rochester. And we do that through our advocacy work. So when it comes to street projects, we always give our input. Hey, where can there be protected bike lanes or some sort of infrastructure that encourages people to take a bike to work or to get groceries? So Jesse is really amazing at spearheading that. He also has different bike education classes for adults and children that are going on right now. And I'll mention that at the end of the presentation if you're interested. But he is great at teaching people how to ride, how to balance, how to use different signals if you're biking on the street to notify cars that you're turning left, you're turning right, things like that. So he's a really great resource at Reconnect Rochester for that. So now I want to get a little bit more into why we advocate for mobility. So once upon a time, if you've never known, Rochester actually used to have a robust cycling community. And we still do have a robust cycling community now. But before there were a lot more vehicles on the road, you saw a lot more people biking. We also had a subway and a streetcar system that would take you from downtown Rochester all the way to Ontario Beach Park, which was really amazing. So you can see the streetcar here, and you can see people's bikes biking to the casino. People biked everywhere. So it was really amazing to see these archive photos from the Rochester Public Library. You can also see here the Rochester subway. And what's really cool is that working at Reconnect Rochester, we often have people say like, hey, I remember taking, the Rochester subway as a child. I remember my parents taking the subway to work. And it's always amazing to hear those stories. So I'm definitely a big fan of learning about Rochester's subway history, what our transportation system looked like before we became a car-centric city. And so not all hope is lost. I will get into some of the improvements and what the future of transportation looks like in Rochester today. But this is just a little bit of history of what it used to look like. Unfortunately, we do not have this subway system anymore with the rise in car ownership in the 50s and with more people moving out into the suburbs. People started getting in their cars to go everywhere. So before, if you lived downtown Rochester, you could walk to get your groceries. You could hop on the streetcar to get to the beach with your family on the weekend. You had options in a densely urbanized neighborhood. But now with neighborhoods looking like this in the suburbs, you have to get in your car to drive everywhere. And a lot of the suburbs, there aren't even sidewalks. So you don't have an option really to walk anywhere if you wanted to. And so with that, our subway system now looks like this. So the Rochester subway closed in 1956. And so less people were riding the subway because of the rise in car ownership in our city. So it closed down, and now our subway system is now a place where graffiti artists can leave their work. It's where our unhoused population find shelter. And it's also a place where people tour and kind of like get the memories going about what the subway system used to be. So it is kind of like a tourist spot here in Rochester, but it was once a robust transportation system that really served the people in the city. And we also have inner city highways with the rise in car ownership in our city. So if this looks familiar to you, this is Inner Loop East. So this is East Avenue and Union Street. And this inner loop has actually been filled in, but could you imagine being a pedestrian or a cyclist before this inner loop was filled in? I couldn't imagine how unsafe it would feel if you had people zooming by you going on and off the highway, or if you're trying to bike to get to the little theater, which is right down the block from here, how unsafe that would feel. So Rochester actually is turning over a new leaf, I'm proud to say. So the inner loop has been filled in, and it's been replaced with housing. It's been replaced with a dedicated cycle track. If you've ever had the opportunity to ride down the cycle track, it's such an amazing experience to be able to just be unworried about, car traffic and not being run over, and you can just kind of mind your own business and get to your destination without that worry. And also local businesses are thriving again. So people are able to walk to get to the Little or to get to other local businesses that are in the area. And with the dedicated bicycle infrastructure, people can now utilize bikes to get to and from their destination in this area. So Rochester is really listening to the community when it comes to what we want to see the future of mobility looks like for our city. So another thing that I want to drive home is that, unfortunately, Rochester has the highest rate of pedestrian and cyclist fatalities across New York State. Well, I should say for upstate New York cities. So compared to Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany, we literally have the highest number of overall crashes if you look at the highlighted numbers. And this is between 2017 and 2021. So it's really shocking. And this is something that at Reconnect Rochester, we really are reminded of on a daily basis, because unfortunately, it seems that every time we turn on the news, there's a new story that, a pedestrian or a cyclist or anybody in the community was killed by a driver. And usually they're going way too fast over the speed limit, or they're running red lights or anything like that. So that really drives the work that we do at Reconnect Rochester and why we think it's so important to create a community where everybody feels safe to navigate, no matter how you're getting around the city, whether you're walking, biking, taking your skateboard, taking the bus, anything like that. We want people to feel as safe as possible. So with that in mind, I do want to get now into the mobility resources that are available here in Rochester. I would not share anything that I have not personally used myself. So you'll know that, this is from my own experience, and I've heard from the community who uses like all of these resources, that it works for them if they have a car or if they don't have a car. So of course we have our RTS bus system. After Reimagine RTS, now the bus systems work a lot better in terms of connecting people to the transit center downtown. And most buses operate at least every 30 minutes. For some bus systems or bus routes, they might operate every 15 minutes. But for the most part, you can at least be assured that there's a bus coming every 30 minutes. There's also RTS On Demand. So that's a great resource for people who don't live in the city, but you want to still use transit to get around. So it's from outside of the city. So like maybe some of the suburbs or like Irondequoit or Gates, Greece, things like that. That's a really great resource to utilize. We also have FlowShare. So that's a car share system that launched last summer. And it's a really great resource if you already have a license. So we have, I think, maybe 4 or 5 electric vehicles that are stationed at different points around the city. And you use a mobile app to be able to unlock the car or schedule it for a certain time. And then from there, you have a card to maybe get your groceries or get to a medical appointment, things like that. So that's a really, really great resource. I know James Dietz has used it before. James is car free. He does not own a car. He relies on public transportation and also uses FlowShare himself. And we've heard so many great things about it so far. So the folks at FlowShare are really awesome and spearheading this program for people in Rochester who would like to use a car to get around. We also have a bike share system program. We have Uber and Lyft, of course. There's paratransit services through RTS Access. And also, if you're interested in cycling as a way of getting around the city, there's our community bikes. So they're really awesome. They do free bike repairs if you already have a bike, but you're like, I would like to get back on my bike, but I don't know how to fix this thing. They do free bike repairs. And if you would like to have a bike, they also give out bikes to people. So to adults, children, anyone. So they're a really great resource here in Rochester. And we also have a great relationship with them as well. But these are just a few of the resources that I really wanted to highlight, because if you don't have a car, you know, not all hope is lost in Rochester. You do have options to get around. So with RTS, I do want to highlight, this is just a system map currently of everywhere that you can get with the RTS bus system, whether it's from On Demand or from RTS Monroe within the city. And it's very affordable compared to other transit systems across the state. So it's $1 per ride or a $3 day pass. You can pay with cash or change. You can pay with an RTS Go card. I use my phone to pay with the transit app. So you can use an app to pay and you just scan the QR code. So that's really helpful as well. And then also they have a reduced fare option for children, seniors, or people with disabilities. And if you are using RTS Access, it's actually free. And you have to complete a form to be eligible for that. But RTS has really come a long way since I first moved to Rochester, and they implemented the Reimagine RTS, I think at the beginning of the pandemic. So I have seen the changes that from what it was when I first moved to Rochester in 2019 to now. And I can definitely say for me, it's very convenient to be able to know at least a bus is coming every 30 minutes, or I can plan out my day or plan out the schedule of the bus. So it's been very eye-opening to see how much they are accepting customer input and making those changes. So if you've never been to the RTS Transit Center downtown, it's really helpful. They have you can buy your tickets there. You can see the bus schedules. They have different gates where you can see where your bus is departing from. And it's really a central location where they rerouted the bus system to be able to meet. So it makes it easier to transfer buses. So not everyone is able to take one bus to get to their destination. But if you do need to take 2 buses, at least you know that you'll be able to transfer at a place where you might be able to, might need to refill your RTS Go card to get on the next bus, or maybe ask the customer help desk where your gate is. So it's really helpful to have that resource here in Rochester compared to other places that I've been where it might not be as robust. So I just wanted to point that out. Also, I also want to point out, if you are interested in getting around by bike, Jesse actually designed a really great Rock Easy bike map. So this map on the left, it actually shows the different bike routes in Rochester that are low stress bike routes. So that's really important, because when I first started biking, I was on right in Henrietta Town Line Road, and there's no bike lanes there, and you have traffic just flying by you. And I wish I had the Rock Easy bike map just to help me find something that was a little less stressful, especially when I was first starting out. So if you're interested in biking to work, I would definitely check this out. This is on our website. All of this information is on our website. And you can see, like, hey, if I start out in Brighton, which bike network can I utilize to get to work downtown in the city? So, you know, there are different options like that available to you if you're interested in cycling. Also, I want to drive home that there's a lot more places that we can get to by bike than you think. So for me, if I can get somewhere within 20 minutes by bike, that's a viable way of getting around the city. I'm not someone who's interested in biking 40 minutes each way to work. But thankfully in Rochester, things are so connected still that I am able to bike to work, to the grocery store, to go hang out with friends very easily within 20 minutes. So Jesse also designed a 20 minutes by bike network that you can also see on the website. And if you live in different parts of the city, or if you live in the suburbs, you can actually see where you can get around Rochester through which bike routes within 20 minutes, because for the most part, 20 minutes is pretty doable for most people, okay? So another thing that we would like to drive home is being multimodal. So what does that mean? So when I say multimodal, I mean utilizing different methods of transportation to get to and from your destination. So when I first started out, before I had a car, and even now sometimes, I will take my bike on the bus. And so each RTS vehicle is actually equipped with 2 front bike racks, which is really helpful, so that you can, we call it the last mile, but if you are walking to get to the bus and then, you know, your bus stop is maybe like 10 minutes away from your destination, it really helps you to get to that last mile of your destination. I promise you it's not as scary as it seems to put your bike on the bus. I've done it plenty of times, and if you're really having a hard time, RTS drivers are really amazing at helping you out, because I've struggled a couple of times. So they're really awesome. You can also bring your e-scooter on the bus. You can bring your hoverboard, a one-wheel skateboard. It's all an RTS policy that you are allowed to bring those devices on the bus. So it's not just bikes, you can bring other things as well, like that. So we encourage people to get multimodal as a way to get around Rochester and get to your destinations. Okay, so what will the future of transportation look like in Rochester? So when I think about, you know, the work that I do, and, you know, in an ideal world, what will, you know, transportation in Rochester look like? For me, I want to see a protected bike network. I want to see more frequent bus service for people. I want to see safer streets, a more complete streets policy. And I always think back to the different current and upcoming projects that are happening that the Reconnect staff in the Rochester community at large can participate in, and that we can use our voice to advocate for those changes that we want to see. So I will point out a couple that's happening right now. So when I went back to the Rochester subway, I said that there are projects going on to kind of revamp the subway. So that's the Aqueduct Reimagined project. So this is the Broad Street Bridge. And right now it's open to car traffic. There's also some bike lanes and a pedestrian pathway. But the Aqueduct Reimagined is actually revamping this to actually close down the bridge to car traffic so that it's only available to pedestrians, cyclists, people on scooters, anything besides a car can pass through this bridge at the end of this project. And they actually have different design concepts available on the Aqueduct Reimagined project website that you can take a look at, because they have a lot of different designs to take a look at. This is just one of them. But basically they want this to be more of a destination that people can be drawn to, right? Because this is an amazing scenic way. It's a very historic way downtown Rochester. And they want to revamp it so that it feels more inviting. So even though our subway system isn't making a comeback, they are utilizing this to make some improvements. So there's going to be more art. During the summer and the spring, there might be some shows that might be happening. So they are revamping this. And I believe that they are still taking some input on some of the concept designs. So if you were interested in giving your input about things that can be improved in the designs, you can always head to that website and give your input there. I also want to point out Reimagine RTS. So this was something that they implemented at the beginning of the pandemic, but unfortunately, they didn't have the chance to fully implement the Reimagine RTS system so that we see frequent bus routes across the board. But this is something that I said that, you know, fortunately, Reconnect has a very strong relationship with RTS staff and RTS leadership. So we are always advocating to continue for that frequent bus service and also other bus amenities like shelters and bus stops and bus seating, things like that. And then there's also the Monroe County Countywide Active Transportation Plan. So this is a county-wide plan that covers anything that has to do with how people get around Rochester. So whether that's biking, taking the bus, walking, and this is something that the Reconnect staff has been like all hands on deck and advocating for these things, because this is a big project that we want to see the county and the city of Rochester really show us that they are interested in creating a Rochester that is walkable, bikeable, and transit oriented. So we want to see people or our city leaders prioritizing different methods of getting around and giving people the option and the choice to get around how they want to, instead of just saying, or, you know, you need a car to get to work or to get to your medical appointments. So we want to see people have that option. So we're always advocating, and there's always an opportunity for input also on this Active Transportation Plan website. So you can actually go on the website and pinpoint different streets that might be problematic and say, hey, we could use a bike lane here. Hey, we could use a speed bump here, things like that. And so they will take that into consideration. So I just want to give a couple of upcoming events that we have at Reconnect Rochester. If you're interested in learning about us as an organization, I would definitely invite you to come out to our engagement breakfast. So we have 3 more coming up for the rest of this year. The next one's on April 21st. It's a free event and it starts at 8:30 at our office at the Hungerford building. And this is just a great opportunity to learn even more about the work that we do, how you can get involved. And if you're interested in different transportation systems in Rochester, we have the community come out, and it's just a great way to chat with other people about like what improvements can be made, what can we do to use our voice. So we have people who come out and they're more interested in cycling. We have people who come out and they're more interested in creating safer streets. So it's really a great way to be able to learn and chat with the community about things that we can do together to create a future of Rochester that has better transportation options for everyone. If you're really interested in the history of cycling in Rochester, I would really invite you to sign up for Jesse's Cycletown USA. So Rochester has a really amazing history in terms of cycling. Right, Rochester was actually known to be the best cycling town in the country at one point in time. And this was in like the 1800s. And it was really cool. So if you're really interested in learning about what the cycling history is like in Rochester, it's a free event. It's on Zoom. And you can head to our website to sign up for that. And then, like I said, Jesse has a lot of bike education classes for adults and children. So you can always sign up for those. And then the last one that I want to quickly tell you about is the local history bike tour. So it's actually an outdoor event where Jesse takes you around Rochester and gives you a tour about the city's history. So it's not so much about the bike history of Rochester, it's just about the history of Rochester. If you want to learn more about different things like maybe the subway history or maybe about the Powers building downtown. So it's a great way to learn about where you live, how to get more connected to the community. And those tours are by bike. So if you're already comfortable on a bike, that's a great option to be able to utilize that resource to be able to take a tour with Jesse. And it's a great resource. So I would highly recommend these upcoming events if you have time. And then some other ways to stay connected with us. We are on social media. There's our website there. And I would highly encourage you guys to get more involved with us. We would love to see you guys come out to some of our events or follow us on social media. We also have an opportunity to share your mobility story on our website. So we have guest bloggers who tell us what it's like to be a cyclist in Rochester. What is it like to be a transit rider? So it's a great opportunity to share your own perspective from somebody who is maybe not from Rochester, or maybe you are from Rochester, but what is it like to get around? What is your perspective? So we are always looking for people to share their story on our website. And also you get a free t-shirt from my online shop. So that's a great plug if I can get that. Okay, so I think with that, I'd love to open this up to some questions if you guys have any. I think I don't know if James is here yet, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll open the chat to see if any came through. Oh, James is here. Perfect. Yep, I see people taking RTS, cars, rides from friends and family. Our team actually just carpooled yesterday to a meeting. So we're a big fan of carpooling at Reconnect Rochester. Actually interested in seeing how you get around, Olivia. Do you take the bus, bike, walk?
I don't take the bus, I drive.
Gotcha. Okay, that's okay. I mean, I don't think anyone came to Reconnect Rochester like, perfect. We've like basically brainwashed people to be like, you know what, you should take the bus. So that's totally okay.
Awesome. Do any classes have any questions for Jaisha before we let her go for the day? If you wouldn't mind waiting for a few moments, Jaisha, as people gather their thoughts.
And if I need to go back to any slides, if anyone needs the information from a slide, please let me know. I'm happy to do that. I see one person coming up. You're welcome.
It looks like someone in Tina's class might have a question. Maybe. Here's a question from Tina. Is there a way to get a free disabled van for a disabled son to attend recreation events?
Mm-hmm. Yep, so RTS Access, if you apply for RTS Access, I'll go back. So it's actually free for users if you complete a online form. So there's no charge, and then you can either call, I believe, the RTS Access number, or they might have an app at this point to request a van so that you don't need to pay for every ride. So wherever you need to go, RTS Access is really great at getting people around. I don't know, James, if you have anything else to add to that, but that is a resource there that is free.
Cool, thank you. And I think James just sent the link, which I'll send out to all of our classes.
Perfect.
Are there any other questions before we wrap up for today? Here's another question. What are the requirements to get that free service that you were talking about?
Yeah, so I'm not really sure how they identify like who can take RTS Access or not. I think it's need-based. So I think if you complete the eligibility form via the link that James dropped in the chat, then they would be able to connect you with someone at RTS who can see if you're eligible to utilize RTS Access. And if not, they can suggest other methods of getting around Rochester. But I think they are pretty good at, I don't think they're at capacity or anything. They're pretty good at getting people to and from their destinations. So definitely check out the link that James dropped in the chat and complete the eligibility form, and they should get in contact with you about that.
All right, Jaisha, if there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and let you go. Thank you again for joining us today, and thank you to the classes who participated and asked questions. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if you guys have any other questions, I have my email. You can always go to the Reconnect Rochester website, shoot me an email. I'm always happy to answer more questions that you guys have. And again, it was so amazing to be able to sit with you guys today and talk about the transportation resources that are here for you. So thank you again.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.